Hi, welcome back, or if you're new here, my name is Alex. I'm an incoming first year veterinary student starting this September, and I am, or what was considered, a low GPA non-traditional applicant.
We were on the right side, looking out the left side, right when we got lost in the night, and right then took a little trip.
I have gotten a lot of questions just wanting to go over kind of my application, my stats, the experiences I had, and to be honest, I recorded this video like a few days ago and I was editing it and I just really hated the format. So I thought what would be better for people who are probably looking for information would be to kind of answer almost in a question format. So I'm going to put every single question I answer in a time card in the description if there's something you really specifically want to see, and that way it should be the easiest. So just to start off, I wanted to answer two things, which is what were the definitions for traditional, non-traditional. For what I basically always went off of is traditional when used in terms of being either a traditional or a non-traditional applicant. I always basically went off of the idea that a traditional applicant was an applicant that was applying typically in their fall semester of their senior year. They're going to be graduating in May with some sort of degree, and essentially what will happen is they'll apply fall semester of their senior year, graduate in May, and then matriculate into vet school the next coming fall. So that is what a traditional applicant normally is. For the most part, it's people who are applying for their very first time, are in school in some capacity, like in undergrad still, and are generally between the ages of like 20 to 23. Obviously there's people that skew either side of that, but then that's where these terms are kind of overarching and encompass a lot of things. So again, these aren't bad terms by any means, but for somebody like me, I am now non-traditional. So the first time I applied, I was a traditional applicant. I am now a non-traditional applicant, or was a non-traditional applicant, purely because after your first time, that's pretty much when you become a non-traditional applicant, is reapplying, being older than the average applicant. I'm not old by any means, I'm 28, so that's not to say anything, but generally just being older than somebody fresh out of undergrad or about to be fresh out of undergrad. Somebody who is changing careers is another example of somebody who would be a non-traditional applicant. In some cases, non-traditional can extend to people who are first-generation college students, so they can be considered non-traditional based on their experiences. It really just depends. Again, for the most part, a traditional applicant is just one that is applying and they're about to finish undergrad, and they will matriculate and apply once and get in, sort of thing. So it's whatever you want to make it, honestly. It's not good or bad. It can kind of just help you align yourself with a community so that you can find other people who might be going through something that you are going through, whether that is having to reapply, whether that's being like older, whether that's being a mother, being a father, being something along those lines. Those can all be things that are encompassed into non-traditional. The other kind of definition I wanted to let you know, like what I'm working off of essentially, is low GPA. So for the most part, what I understand or what I go off of is a low GPA is anything under a 3.3. And then kind of from a 3.3 to a 3.6 is, an average GPA, honestly up to a 3.5. And then above a 3.5 is normally a competitive or a high GPA. Obviously 3.7 and up is really competitive. But yeah, that's what I'm going off of when I reference low GPA. Let's get into the meat that everybody wants to hear. So how many times did I apply? I applied 4 times. So my first time, and then I reapplied 3 times. First time in 2017 cycle, and then 3 more times were reapplications. So once in 2020, once in 2021, and then once in 2023, which was the most recent cycle that I got in. How many schools did I apply to each time? The first and the second application, I really lost all my data, if I'm being completely honest. I got lost to the times because FemCast kind of like, I'm not going to say erases that information, but it was really hard to go back and figure that out. But anyways, I think the first time I applied to 5 or 8 schools, I think it was honestly closer to 5, but I only got into University of Sydney, I got into Ross Vet Prep, and I got into SGU, and I decided against all of them because Sydney required that you move in February start, and I was actually still finishing 2 classes. I walked in December of 2017 for my degree, but I was still finishing 2 classes, and I wasn't gonna be able to do that going to Australia. And also getting a student visa that quickly was really stressing me out, so I ultimately decided to not go there. And then Ross Vet Prep and SGU at the time, I decided not to go because at the time in 2017, they were incredibly much more expensive than pretty much any state and country school. So I spoke with my support system, which is my parents, and we decided that we were gonna try again to get in-state. My second cycle that I applied, 2020, I think I applied to around like 12 programs, and with that one I was unable at that point to apply anywhere like internationally because I now had a dog that I had done a bunch of research and I couldn't really find a safe way that I trusted that I could get him shipped anywhere that I was going. So I just decided that, you know, I have to make sacrifices because I love him and I want him with me. So I decided that I was gonna have to stay in country, or at least in Canada was still in the realms. Like, I'm originally from Canada. But yeah, the third time I applied to, I think, like 15 schools, and that was the year that I got on the wait list for Iowa. I was really low, and by low I mean I was like 236 out of 264, so I was never gonna get off. And then this past cycle I applied to 24 schools, and before you say anything, this was truly gonna be my last cycle. I was pretty much done with applying. I also was very thankful to have a very nice job that I had saved up a bunch of money for, and this is why I took a break in between 21 and 2023 cycle to essentially save up this money to kind of give it one last like oorah, you know, sort of thing, and really go for it. So yeah, how many schools did I get into? So I already explained that the first year I got into Ross Vet Prep, SGU, and University of Sydney. My second year that I applied, I got in nowhere. I didn't even get an interview invite. My third year that I applied, I did not get any interview invites, but I got on Iowa State's waitlist, and I was 236 out of 264. And then this past cycle, I got 5 interview invites from Mississippi State, KSU, Minnesota, Michigan State, and LMU. I was waitlisted for the UAF CSU program. I was interview waitlisted for Midwestern, and then ultimately rejected after on the interview waitlist. I interviewed with LMU and then was waitlisted for the program after, so I did interview with them, and then I was offered a spot off of the waitlist in the UAF CSU program. I withdrew my application from LMU, and then overall the schools I was accepted to were Kansas State, University of Minnesota, Iowa State University, Mississippi State University, Michigan State University, and then the UAF CSU program. So I got into 6 schools this cycle. What were my final stats that I got in this cycle to get into 6 schools? So my overall GPA was a 3.31. My science prerequisite GPA was anywhere from a 3.17 to a 3.41 depending on the school. And then my last 45 GPA was anywhere from a 3.56 to a 3.8. What degrees do I have? So I have a Bachelor of Science in biology with a minor in chemistry. I have a Master of Animal Science and non-thesis, and a Master of Science in comparative biomedical sciences, also non-thesis. And then what were my experiences? So again, just to preface this, I've worked in the vet field for over 9 years, so my hours might be a lot more, but obviously I also reapplied 4 times, so don't freak out, I guess is the best thing I'm saying. I had to compensate with lower GPAs with a lot of hours. So veterinary experience, I have close to 10,000 hours working as a vet assistant at a GP, at a veterinary teaching hospital, as a vet assistant and receptionist at a holistic vet practice. I did some veterinary service trips to Thailand with Loop Abroad, and then I also attended some pre-vet symposiums during my undergrad career where we were able to do some wet labs under the supervision of vets. So overall, that's close to 10,000 hours. And then my animal experience is close to 5,000 hours. I originally started in the vet med field as a kennel assistant and receptionist, so that's around 3,600 hours. And then I was also a volunteer veterinary appointment coordinator for a nationwide rescue. I also helped with leading horses around to help children with disabilities ride them, and then volunteered with dog rescues, horse rescues, and everything. This is a really condensed version of my experience, my animal experience, but close to 5,000 hours, if not more than that. For research, I did not have a ton, if I'm being honest, but recently through my last master's, I was able to get 2 different certifications. So I got a city program certification. I got an IACUC ORIS Animal Care and Use certification, which was 6 hours. And then I also worked with a professor during my final semester of my undergrad year college experience to basically help her prep and run samples through electrophoresis to help with her research for a court case. And then I also created my own research project with a separate professor with dealing with bat identification. And I presented it at a little research thing, but it wasn't anything crazy. So non-animal employment, in my corporate America job, I was a fleet coordinator. So I have around almost 5,000 hours of doing that because I've had that job for the last 2.5 years. And then I was also a graduate teaching assistant during my first master's for a semester. So that's 340 hours. What were my letters of recommendation? How many did I have and who did I have them from? So every year I had obviously at least the 3, but it also varied every year of how many I had. I think the third year, was it the third year? Yeah, the third year I applied, I think I had 6, which was the most I'd ever had. And then now this year I had 5. The first one was from the DVM that gave me my first ever vet med job. He has written me literally a letter of recommendation every single time I've ever asked for one for anything, whether it's my school programs, whether it's for applying to vet school. He has been a huge mentor. Him and the office manager that I have there have done everything in their power to make sure that I get a letter of recommendation, whatever I want to do, and have just been cheering me on the whole time. So I'm incredibly appreciative of them. They were, were and are the practice that made me fall in love with vet med. They hold a special place in my heart. I also got my supervisor from my job at the vet teaching hospital to write me one, as well as my current supervisor at my non-vet med corporate America job. And then I also got my academic advisor from undergrad, who I was really close with because she was the advisor for our pre-vet club and I was pre-vet club president. And then I also had an RVT that I worked with at NC State as vet teaching hospital who works in ICU now. She wrote me one. Those were my letters of recommendation. Did I take the GRE? Yes. I took the GRE twice. As of right now, most schools don't even require it anymore, so I didn't find it necessary to retake it for this cycle because my scores just expired. But I think when I first took it, I got a 305, which I don't even think they score it based on that scale anymore, but it was like low average at the time, so it wasn't great or anything. But thankfully, I don't have to take it anymore. But yeah, I did take it at one point. I just didn't apply to schools this year that still required it. Did I take the Casper? Yes, I think I've taken the Casper at least 2, if not 3 times, and I've gotten 4th quartile in all of them. If you want me to do a separate video on how to handle Casper and MMIs and behavioral interviews, I can. I kind of love interviews, which might sound psychotic, I guess, but I love interviews. So if you want me to do any tips and tricks I have for any of those, let me know. And then, how many schools have I actually gone to? So I have technically gone to 4 schools if you are meaning in the terms of did I get degrees or certificates from them. So I actually went to a school in my first year before I transferred to my undergrad to do my pre-vet journey, and I wanted to be an artist at the time. So I do actually have a certificate in visual and communicative arts from that school. I have a obviously Bachelor of Science from my undergrad, and then I have 2 master's degrees. So 4. If you're talking about how many transcripts I have, I think it's close to 7. So I have a ton of transcripts just from all the classes I had to take because either a class wasn't offered at my school or just all the schools I've been to and the programs and everything. So yeah, close to 7, if not 6 or 7, I can't remember. My GPAs change over my application cycles. So like I said previously, my stats have been lost to the times because Vemcast, I guess I could ask them to download it for me way back, but it was a while ago. But so from 2017, I think Vemcast calculated my GPA, my overall at like 2.8 or like a 2.9. Like it was not good. It was low. Maybe even lower, honestly. But from my second application cycle, my overall GPA was around like a 3.06. My science prerequisite GPA was around a 2.78 to a 2.84, and then my last 45 was a 2.81, which if you compare that to my just past cycle, I had an overall GPA of a 3.31, a science prereq GPA of a 3.17 to a 3.4, depending on the school, and then a last 45 of a 3.56 to a 3.8. I definitely think everything that I did, retaking courses, my master's programs, everything did help to bring up those GPAs. I would be lying if I said I understand exactly how that math works, but it was nice to see some improvement. Obviously, I'm never going to be like a 3.7 GPA student. At this point, I've taken so many credits that I don't think it's like possible for me to even move my GPA anymore. But I am proof that it does move. So if you work hard and you do well, because I just got, like, I think with the classes I just took for my master's and the 2 classes I retook, I think that gave me, my last 45 was a 3.85 at some schools. So it works, it helps. Did I get any D's or F's on my transcript? Yes. I have 1 F on my transcript and then I have 2 D's, I think, overall. I retook all of those classes and I ended up doing way better in all of them. I think at least I got a B, if not an A, in most of them. But yes, I do have those. I think my biggest advice is do not let it destroy you. I think that's the thing. I got an F after basically struggling super hard in this class, having a ton of disagreements with the professor. I did not really like him, and you're gonna run into people you don't like, unfortunately, and you're just not gonna mesh with him. And instead of rising above it, I kind of really let it crush me, and it kind of ruined basically the rest of my college experience, and that sucked. The other side of it too is I wish somebody had told me, just take a W. Like, don't even let that man give you an F, basically. I was terrified because I always felt like W's were basically just as bad as F's, but in reality, after seeing the differences, I think W's are much, much preferable to F's. And not to mention, you can get that class off your course load or your plate, and you can focus on other classes and do better in them. But overall, if it does happen, because it might, don't let it destroy you. Don't let it destroy you as a student. Don't let it destroy your mental health. Don't let it destroy how you feel about yourself, because it doesn't make you a bad student. It happens. I truly, there was so much going on in that time in my life. I was literally in so many things, and I had agreed to do so many things that it's not shocking that I got an F, and it sucks because it did kind of tank my GPA along with everything else. But you know, if I had bounced back from it and just did better, honestly, it wouldn't have really mattered. So that's my advice. But overall, don't get discouraged. It's not the end of the world. It truly isn't. It just might be a little bit harder to get in, but if you bounce back from it and you do well, then it's almost like it didn't matter. And it became a really nice talking point in my interviews and everything, because this was the year that I finally decided I wasn't going to be embarrassed by having an F on my transcript. And I did actually talk about it in some of my interviews and some of my essays and everything, and they were actually incredibly receptive to it, and actually it opened a really good discourse in one of my interviews. Just putting that out there, being honest, and I'm not saying anything that we're saying is excuses, because, you know, nobody's gonna know your life as well as you do, but I truly just owned up to things this year and just really took it into myself and grew from it, and it seemed to win over a lot of people. How do I feel about getting rejected to my in-state? So my in-state this year was UGA. I have applied to UGA every single year. Obviously I was only in-state at UGA for 2 years, so 2 of those years, whatever. I mean, I guess I did get rejected from NC State twice as well, but it would be lying to say this year didn't hurt a lot finding out that I got rejected from UGA. I put a lot of work into my application. Not to say that anyone else didn't, but I really put in a lot of work. Like, I talked to people who used to be on the admissions committee. I did well in my master's program that was through them. I did probably as much as I possibly could have done to, you know, work on my application and do well, but it just didn't work out. At the end of the day, you have to come to terms with the fact that I didn't get in. And this is what really comes in, is like, this was my 4th time applying. I've been rejected from my, whatever my in-state was, every single year. I had to basically decide, like, either I go out of state or I'm probably not going to vet school. So that was my decision. I had to talk to my support system. Make sure you talk with your support system and understand what's actually like feasible for you to go and do. But yeah, that is why I'm heading out of state. But I would basically be saying it would be a lie to say that it didn't hurt to be rejected from my in-state. Yeah. But that's life. I had known people who have applied like 5+ times just to their in-state and never got in. So really just weigh it, whether you want to keep doing that with the possibility that you're never going to go to vet school, or if it's even possible to go anywhere but your in-state. I just look into it, be honest with yourself, talk to your support system. But yeah, it sucks. It sucks being rejected from your in-state. It sucks being rejected from anywhere. On that topic, how to deal with rejection. So obviously, from having applied 4 times, I have been rejected so many times I can't even count. And I'm not gonna lie and say it ever gets any easier. It still hurts. I got into obviously 6 schools this cycle, and obviously getting rejected from my in-state hurt bad. I had my little pity party for a few days, but it never gets easier because it feels personal. I probably sound like just everybody else. It is not personal. There are simply so many applicants, so many good applicants, and not to say that you are not a good applicant, but it could be one little thing that, you know, somebody else has or somebody else did or something that just touted them up higher. That's the easiest way I can say it. I know it feels personal. I know you're like, wow, when I must suck, like they don't like me, like I got rejected like multiple times, and I had those feelings for multiple years, and finally came to the point that, like, you know what, I'm an amazing applicant, I'm an amazing person, all that stuff. If they reject me, you know, that's on them, and they're going to miss out on me as a veterinary student, me as a person in their class, and somebody that is going to excel or become, what's the word I'm looking for, like become somebody who can carry on their name and be like, I graduated from here, sort of things. You know, that's how I finally have come to look at it, is just like one person could pass you over and somebody else could give you the shot that you need, and all you need is one shot. I, for years historically, have been like, please, I just need one school to let me in, one school, please, please, please give me the opportunity. I will wow your socks off. And when Iowa State put me on their wait list, even though I had no hope of getting off, it like lit this fire under me that I was like, okay, somebody is finally seeing what I am trying to put out here. Somebody is seeing it. And this year I was purely just hoping for one school, and to have 6 and even have 5 interview invites and all that stuff was insane and completely unexpected. Just believe in yourself. Don't beat yourself up. A rejection does not mean you as a person have something wrong with you. I promise, because I have received quite a lot, quite a lot of rejections over the 4 times I've applied. Kind of going into that I've had a lot of people ask me questions about is, when do you call it quits? So the first thing I'm going to say is, this is incredibly personal to you and how you feel and how you can live. If I was still working at the place I was working before I started at my corporate America job, I can completely understand why people have to move on and go to a different career. I was barely making ends meet. I had roommates. I was living as cheaply as possible. I had 2 jobs at one point just to, you know, have enough money to live. And I had zero quality of life, zero work-life balance, anything. And so I can understand, like, I was close to quitting at that point. I ended up applying the same time that I quit and got a new job. And that's when I realized, like, oh, okay, I'm a little bit better mentally now. I can actually live, I can save up to do these expensive things. And now going into vet school, I even have savings that I'm living off of for rent and gas money and groceries and all that stuff. And so I'm going in a much better headspace than I would have been if I was still scraping by to live before. So it's very personal to you. You have to sit down and ask yourself, are you ready to go another time? Do you need a break? Oh, that's another thing. I think the cycle break I took in between 2021 cycle and this 2023 cycle was like the biggest difference. Continually reapplying back to back to back is so mentally taxing and draining because of the essays and the rejections and the people asking you, did you get in? What's the update? And they mean well, but it literally drains you. It drains your battery. It just destroys you mentally. So if you have to take a break, take a cycle break, do everything in your power in that year in between, year and a half, I guess, to completely wow them the next cycle. I think that was the biggest difference for me, is I took a break, I completed my master's program, I retook these 2 classes, and then I just set aside so much time just to fill out my application and focus on it and make sure that my essays were top notch and all of this stuff. And so I went into the cycle feeling better than I ever had in the past. So if you need to, if you end up having to reapply, just know you can take a break. and mentally be better. I definitely had all the same feelings of, oh my gosh, I'm not applying. What if they don't think I don't even know what I thought, honestly. I felt like if I didn't apply every single cycle, they're gonna be like, oh, she gave up. She doesn't love it as much as she said she did or whatever, which is not true. And also I definitely have like FOMO, like fear of missing out, because I still watched like Student Doctor Network, like the whole cycle that I skipped out on, and was like, man, that could have been me. That could have been me. Realistically sitting back and looking at myself and going, no, you're doing these things to lift up your application so that will be you next year. And that was just the mind frame reset that I did for myself, is that I took this break because I'm going to get in. And I definitely had conversations with people where I said this was going to be my last time, like the fourth time. I mean, I'm pretty sure I said my third time it was going to be my last time. Nobody believed me, apparently, after I took a consensus of my friends and family. But after that, I think everyone thought the fourth time was going to be the final time. Everybody was pretty sure. And in my head and in my heart, I was talking with somebody and I was like, you know what, like based on how this cycle was already going, I definitely probably would have reapplied again. But thankfully I don't have to. But yeah, so it's up to you. I would just look at everything. Are you happy is the biggest thing. Like, are you living an okay life? Are you getting to meet up with friends? I think that's the other thing, is I took this year-long break of my life revolving around vet school and was able to do so many things that I had been restricting myself from doing, which is like going on trips with friends and actually having money to spend for frivolous things instead of just consistently having my world revolve around vet school, which I'm pretty sure my friends would still say that my world revolved around vet school, but to me, I was like, I'm taking a break. I don't know. If you need to, and also if you need to take a break, if you also feel like this is it for you and you're done, then that's also fine. I think the idea of calling it quitting sounds really bad, because we've all probably been raised with the idea that don't be a quitter or whatever, and I hate that. I hate that, because that is so disrespectful to the amount of effort and work and everything that we have all put in, that it's not quitting, it's just choosing a different path and choosing when to go down that different fork in the road. And that doesn't make it a bad thing. Half the people, I mean, not even half, all of the people I've met who have worked in vet med or been pre-vet students or any of those things, all have the most amazing tenacity and the most amazing work ethic that I've ever seen, that you will go and excel in any other career field, I promise you. I was working in my corporate America job off with my vet med like work ethic, and was consistently shocking everyone and be, oh my god, why do you care so much? I'm like, I don't know, are you not supposed to care? And realizing that, you know, when it's not an actual living, breathing things, life is not on the line, people really don't care, which is interesting. Yeah, so it's up to you, but I completely understand your feelings, and if you ever have any more questions about that, like, just let me know. Another question I get is about age and going into vet school. I personally do not care about age. I guess that's the best thing I can say about it. I am 28. I know that that's probably, I think, like a little bit older than the average or whatever, but I do not care. I have friends that are way younger than me. I have friends that are way older than me. Like, we're all there to go to vet school and we're all there to be classmates. So, you know, I don't think age super matters. I've also seen a lot of people who are older that are in vet classes and they do exceedingly well. I also think that they tend to be like pillars for that vet class, because in some cases, maybe we've experienced more life than somebody fresh out of undergrad. I've been in the working world for how many years now, and I've been dealing with taxes and all of these things, which, you know, maybe they did deal with, and that's fine. I've just had to like problem solve so many things. I'm here to go to vet school. I'm going to make friends and I'm gonna have a fun time doing it, but I don't think age matters, and I'm not gonna be asking anyone their age besides to be like, are we celebrating your birthday? So don't be scared. I think I did the math. I'm going to be graduating vet school when I think I'm 32 or 33 or something like that. And I had people that I knew that applied when they were 30 and they graduated when they were almost 35. Or I've seen people who are in their 40s and 50s. I've seen parents, like all that stuff. I am just here to support my classmates, support myself and everything. I'm never going to judge anyone for what stage of their life they're in or what their age is, because that's ridiculous. So, but yeah, don't be afraid. I think that's a big thing that I hear a lot, is people are like, well, I'm going to be, I don't know, like 30. What about this? And I'm like, you're going to have other people that are close to your age too. I promise you. And if there aren't, then that doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, we're here to be veterinarians. If anyone's like mistreating you for your age, screw them. The last question I've gotten, and this might take up a while, is do I feel like master's programs helped me? The quick answer is yes. I do believe that after taking my master's programs, my GPAs did change. However, my caveat is I feel like my comparative biomedical sciences master's actually helped me way more than my animal sciences. In my personal opinion, for whatever reason, animal science classes do not account into your GPA in the same way. I think when you have biomedical sciences, it actually counts more biology and chemistry and things than animal sciences, which kind of can be sometimes in this like weird outer sphere of where it's still a science, but it's like kind of different, kind of not. So that's my personal opinion. I think just because after having my animal sciences master's, I didn't really see like a huge difference. I saw a difference, but I didn't see a huge difference. Whereas my comparative biomedical sciences one, truly schools were recalculating like science prereq GPA, and I was just looking better. So I don't know. That's my personal opinion. The other thing I wanted to go in, I think schools and people and everything push so hard for people to immediately go get a master's when you do not get in your first cycle. I think it's insane. As somebody who was pushed very quickly into like, you have to go get a master's, which granted, I had a very low GPA, so that makes sense. I do think they are touted and pushed way too heavily. Masters are very expensive. They're time consuming, especially as somebody who literally for my first master's, I was working 2 jobs and doing my master's to be able to afford it, to be able to live, all that things. That was incredibly draining, and I would not recommend to anyone. My mental health was at an all-time low. And then for my second master's, I was very thankful to have like a living situation where I was basically living for free. But with that, I was able to pay for it with my new job and be able to only like just focus on paying that and like my other living expenses and everything. But yeah, so I truly believe these are pushed like very heavily, and they're very expensive, and that can be very difficult for people to do, and they just seem to be like first suggestion, it feels like, when people are getting application reviews or anything. What I always wish I would have done, and what I try to tell people now, like really look at your application and really look at the grades you got and everything, and see if there's any classes that you can retake to show that you can do better than that before you just jump into a whole master's program. Because I'll be honest, if I were to leave vet med field right now, neither of my degrees would really mean anything. I'm sure I could probably find somewhere that they would be meaningful, but without like hands-on experience, because they're both non-thesis based, they're kind of just sitting there. So if you want to go into research or go into some sort of like PhD possible, you know, some sort of like dual degree program, that's fine. I would just make sure that when you're making the decision for what program you want to go into, that you're making it with all the information you possibly can. I also, when I was speaking with somebody who used to be on the admissions committee, who is a professor at one of the schools I went to, I was talking to them, and he kind of was like asking me all these questions about my application and ended up asking about my master's programs. And he made a comment that essentially there are some master's programs out there that are really nothing. They're not worth anything in their eyes, that they don't get looked on very properly. So I would just be careful that what you're getting your master's in is actually worthwhile, and it is something that a vet school is going to look at positively. Non-thesis based masters already kind of have like an interesting step, because I will say that there are people out there that don't view non-thesis masters as anything. To say, which as somebody who has 2 non-thesis masters, I worked very hard in both of my masters. I did a lot of work. I was also working full time. So to me, it is hurtful when people say that, but I also understand that there are other people who do master's programs that end up with like a large like master's presentation at the end, or a thesis or something along those lines, and that is definitely a lot of work as well. So I get it to some degree, but it's like the odds and ends of like where you're trying to end up with that degree sort of thing. And at one point I did want to be in research, so I did really like heavily consider doing a actual thesis based master's program. But that's like a whole other story. I would just say that some of these master's programs that I see out there that are being thrown around are interesting to say the least. I'm not really sure how well they would fare in terms of getting you into vet school. Yeah. All I'm going to say is look at your application. If there's classes that you can retake first, I would try there first before immediately jumping into a master's program. The next thing I would look at when you're vetting master's programs is what are the classes they're teaching? Are they something that I found when I was going through this application process is that a lot of schools were very interested in the fact that I took a master's program, like the comparative biomedical sciences program. I took a program that actually had some first year vet student classes, and they really liked that, and it showed to them that I would be able to handle the rigor of vet school. So look into these programs, look into what classes they're teaching. I know, for example, when I was doing my research, I saw that Iowa State actually, well, when I was talking to the admissions committee with Iowa State after I got on the wait list, they actually, if you go do their comparative biomedical sciences program, which in person in Iowa, they will actually look at your application as an in-state applicant, which means that you're not going to be viewed in the pool of, you know, like 800 other applications from out of state. You'll actually be viewed in the much smaller pool of in-state applicants, which is a really good trade-off. So I would really look into these programs, look into what the schools are offering if you go do their program, and see what happens from there. But essentially, that's kind of my like 2 cents on master's programs. I truly, if you ask me today, do I have any regrets? I would say I wish I went back and didn't do my animal sciences master's. I think I was just kind of panicking at the time, and it worked out that I had tuition waivers and all these things from the school that I was going to because I worked at that school. I don't really think in the grand scheme of things it did anything for me, and it was just more school and more headache and stress versus I wish I would have just started retaking classes then instead of putting my money and effort into a master's program. So yeah, that is my 2 cents on master's programs. If you have more questions about master's programs, let me know. But yeah, that I think encompasses all of my feelings on that. Last thing I'm going to say is be positive and don't compare yourself to others. I think that was the hardest lesson I ever had to learn, was to stop comparing myself word for word to other people, because you're going to see somebody with a, you know, a way higher GPA get in, and you're going to see people with a way lower GPA get in, and you're going to be stuck there in the middle, and you're going to say, why didn't I get in? I have this, I have this, I have this. And this was something that hit me for years because I have thousands of hours of experience, not to say that other people don't, but I have that. And when you have people in your life just in your ear constantly telling you, you deserve to be in, you deserve to be in, you deserve to be in, you just start believing it. And not to say I don't deserve to be in, but everybody's situation and application is their own, so you can only take things as the grain of salt or at face value that they give you, and you can only kind of compare from there. The best case or the best example I would take from this is don't compare yourselves directly, but an example is Illinois doesn't have a specific cutoff for GPA, but if you go read their forum, they pretty much deny anyone who doesn't have a 3.7. There's rare example scenarios where people have other GPAs that were accepted in or accepted to the next round and offered an interview, but for the most part, they do a pretty harsh GPA cut. So instead of comparing yourself and being like, oh man, why don't I have this? Why don't I have this? You can compare yourself in that sense of like, okay, well, that person had a 3.7, so they got through. I don't have a 3.7, so I'm not going to apply to them, sort of thing. And end of all, just be positive, be nice to the people around you. I have seen so many instances of people being rude or snippy or anything to people who are going to potentially be your future coworkers, your future classmates, your future professors, your colleagues, and that just does not look good, because at the end of the day, the vet med community is actually so small, and I would just hate for someone to say something when they are emotionally vulnerable that they can never take back. Just be positive, believe in yourself. I believe in you, and so many people do. Reach out to your communities, reach out to other people, and if you ever have any other questions, let me know. My plan is to vlog my journey as I move to my school next week, and kind of what that entails of moving in, and then my journey kind of through first year and everything. But yeah, that should technically probably be my next video, is my moving vlog. So I'm moving 15 hours, so that should be fun. But yeah, bye.
We were on the right side, looking out the left side, right when we got lost in the night, and right then took a little trip. Down came the drip, yeah, rain down for us.